All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on Fairy Tale. Today we are here with Alex. Alex, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, thanks Jay for having me. I'm Alex, currently AI engineer at Base 10, and I used to go to Pomona College, studied math, CS, and philosophy. And yeah, while I was at Pomona, founded the AI incubator called Pi, and ran it for a few years. And yeah, it's a little about me.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. I have one question for you about your time at the Claremont colleges, and that is out of the dorms that you lived in, which was your favorite dorm?
Yeah, I think because there was like the housing crisis when I was there, um, I don't think we got a good hand for the dorms. I lived in Norton, which is like behind Ferry. That was pretty good. So yeah, I enjoyed that. The proximity to CMC's dining hall.
Yeah. Oh, so you went
Yeah.
to Collins more often than Very?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I know controversial take, but people should go to Collins more often. I don't like Ferry that much. So
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, some of my friends do that too. Every breakfast, every dinner they have at Collins rather than Ferry. So makes sense. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to take a step back and we're going to go start with your academic journey and start with your time at Pomona. As you said, you've done these three disciplines of math, philosophy, of computer science, but just curious, what sort of led you to the world of computer science?
yeah, I think I was always into like making things since I was young. So I started coding, in elementary school, middle schoolish, just wanted to build like cool websites and forums for my friends, like, the basic static sites. And then really got into like, solving these like complex puzzles. I think that's I got into it initially.
And then I know we're skipping a little bit in terms of time, but you also went on to pursue your master's at Brown for computer science. What was the reasoning behind going to or pursuing academics further?
Yeah, I think in CS there was like at the Claremont colleges, there's certain topics that doesn't get covered in as much depth. And I feel like a master's or like graduate school education further is a good step to cover those topics that, is not available at the Claremont colleges, how to make a database from scratch, currencies work and how you can like re-implement the blockchain, and then some of the advanced topics in AI, like self-supervised learning, and the research side of that was like some of the knowledge I took away from my time
Okay.
at Brown.
Yeah. Yeah. And for, I guess, the current students who are studying computer science or whatever major, do you advise them, which is, I know this can be tricky, but would you recommend people to go and pursue academics to learn about those topics that they may not get at the Claremont colleges, or should they just get the experience somewhere else?
Yeah, if I had to do it right now, I think you know there's so much cool things to build. There's a lot of cool companies to join at the moment just as an operator. You can learn so much by being at a startup. So if I was entering the job market currently, I would try to find one of these, high growth companies where you can really own a piece of the, contribution that is critical to its growth and learn by doing versus going to graduate school. I think, a lot of the computer science like knowledge has also been commoditized in a sense with tools like Claude Code and Cursor. So the value of code is going down like basically to, very little slash small. And I think, you know, unless you're pursuing like in depth of studying a subject like reinforcement learning, or I think of it as sort of like you're either studying in depth of pre-training or you're gonna do research in post-training or you're doing some completely novel area like world modeling. And I think those are the only sort of areas that is worth investigating in AI at the moment. And then Also, if you were interested in becoming like a professor, right? So the PhD route definitely makes sense. So you can specialize something in like computer systems or databases or programming languages, something like that, and then become a professor. But I think like if you just want to get into like AI ML in general, you'll get just by working in industry.
Yeah, that's actually I feel like that's really good advice for both populations. But I guess speaking for that first part of like the people who are just generally interested, you mentioned learning by doing and getting hands-on experience. One way you sort of helped cultivate that at the Claremont colleges was through your foundation and the creation of Pi. So, first of all, I guess we kind of got a sense of why you made it, but I want to ask, what was your vision and your mission that you had in mind for Pi?
Yeah, I think the mission was very much like, I think everyone at Claremont is very interdisciplinary and there's a lot of interests. And I think the best projects come from people from different disciplines working together. And then Pi was really like a platform to help people incubate their ideas. And then we had this like AI ML angle because in 2019 we saw that, deep learning was going to become more popular. We read the papers of like GPT-2 and then we saw that you can actually generate like pretty crappy websites, but that will one day turn into really good products.
Yeah.
And we saw that, people were interested in exploring this area more informally, learning by doing with your peers and with some sort of structure and mentorship with like faculty on the advisory board or like more concrete timelines and project proposals. So it was really a medium for folks to do that. And it's
Yeah.
grown into a great community.
Yeah. And it's still going strong. And I think the one part that I also appreciated was this ability to get to lead other people, other friends and community members on your own project. And sort of looking back, I know there's a lot you sort of projects you went through and mentored, but is there sort of a favorite one that you've got to experience?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a couple. I think there was like a EEG, like brain computer interface project that was quite interesting. It was trying to like predict hand gestures based on your brain signal. I know, like, I think this was the second year someone was doing like a reinforcement learning project where they simulated like drones and Unity and trying to like make drones autonomous. And
Mm,
it turns out like, RL is a hard task and it wasn't very successful, but you learned.
yeah.
So yeah, I think those are just like two from the top of my head.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think for anyone that's out there that like wants to get into some technical building and just experiencing being on a project or leading a project, I think Pi is a really good way to get into it. So yeah, thanks for making it.
Of course, of course. Thanks for continuing to run it. Thanks for yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. One thing I personally sort of admired about you was your experience in all of these different venture capital fellowships. And I say that because I was part of one last summer and I loved everything about it. The community I was part of, the people I got exposure to, some of the work I was doing. So it's really great that you got to see different firms and have these different communities to join. So I want to ask you, who was like the coolest person you met, whether that's a friend or a mentor, someone that like you're like, wow, I can't believe I met this person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll give sort of a general comment there. I've met a lot of like great operators that sort of taught me how to do like go to market while I was doing these in these venture firms because no one really teaches you like how to market software products in college or like
Yeah.
there's no academic experience to do that. So, and these were like, ex-founders that are like friends of the firm. So they were awesome. I also met like a lot of different friends. I still hang out with like to this day in New York. Just went to like one of their birthday parties actually. So yeah, I think they're awesome. And the fellowships were a really good opportunity to just chat about like your interests, stuff you're excited about, stuff you're building on the side, what's happening at the companies you're working for. I think it was a great experience for that. And yeah, I think when you put like a group of like-minded people together similarly to Pi, people tend to stay in touch and become friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine it's so interesting to see what the people are up to. Like, randomly, you see them maybe start their own company. Maybe they joined a really cool startup, or even if you just talk about whatever, maybe they traveled, and it's really cool to see that everyone's on their own timing. They're doing their own respective cool things, but like you guys have that shared experience, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think I've also heard folks in these fellowships like recruit each other into like if someone was founding a company, they would try to recruit from this group of folks. Or like if someone needed a referral because you're at like Ramp or a really cool company, that tends to be like a great network
Yeah.
to get your friends in the same company for that upside
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And then from these fellowships and from other experiences, I also imagine you got insight into the investing side.
Yes.
Mm, I feel like the people who are technical and our investors are sort of a minority, but I wanted to ask you, what is like the specific domain knowledge or the know-how that you bring to the investing community or the investing side yeah, like what do you look for in a founder that's sort of different?
Yeah, I think it's very much like whether you have good taste in people and in character. And that's like a skill I feel like people can just develop over time. What I look for specifically is, couple of things. One is whether it's a great market. I think the market basically defines everything. A really good product in a poor market would not work versus a mediocre product in a great market. And then so you want to look for like, the secular trends, like the biggest like total addressable market, things like that. But beyond that, I think especially for the early stage, like investors are right to be like people obsessed. So you're looking for people who are gritty because it is a very hard thing to be founding something. So
Yeah,
people who have that resilience and their psyche can be sort of tested by, seeing evidence of that in their past, or is there something in their childhood that they were obsessed over slash did competitively. I think those are great like indicators of like traits of being a great founder. And I think some, like some other under observed or like underrated traits are like, did this person make you feel like scared slash fearful? Like, are they so good at their craft or domain that you feel intimidated by them? And if you do, that is usually a pretty good sign that they can, do like yeah, they can be,
yeah,
good at that part of the job. Being I think disagreeable is part of being a good founder as well, which is non-obvious, where sometimes it is the right route to, disagree with the investors to push back on the advice that everyone else is telling you. So really have your own like strong thesis and perspective in the world and being like disagreeable is actually something I look for. You don't want someone who like is too agreeable. But on the other lens, you want this person to have like aura, for lack of a better word, or charisma, because founding is a sales job. Like, can this person raise money that's selling? Can they, secure their early customers? That's the most obvious form of selling. Can they convince the early employees who are making kind of these irrational decisions sometimes to leave their comfortable and well-paid jobs to join kind of this very high risk
right.
venture and take all their bets on you? I think you have to be a very charismatic and authentic salesperson, or at least have your own like sales style to like convince your investors, customers, and like early employees. So I think that's like
Yeah.
I need to feel that when I talk to these
Okay.
people.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of a non-comprehensive list, but just some things I look for.
That's a good yeah. I like that. I like that last part a lot. Actually, and I wanted to ask, do you ever feel like you are maybe overly critical or you're like overlooking into the technical background or the foundation of the product or the founder because of your experience in software engineering?
Yeah, I think so in my current role, I'm doing like actually half technical, half go to market work. So as mentioned before, sort of like code and technology or like software specifically is becoming more commoditized. It's very easy to generate by everyone at this point. So what's differentiating for companies is whether you can do distribution well, whether you can get attention, whether that attention is effective, right? It's the right form of attention where it converts to like revenue or usage over a long period of term. And then I look for things like great business models. I think that's super important as well. So, I used to weigh more on like, the technical expertise or specifically how the technology piece is defined in your business, but I'm like less and less focused on that
Got you.
as code generation becomes so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also good for you because you're getting the both best of both worlds, I feel like. And you're learning constantly. Yeah.
Yes, definitely,
Um,
definitely learning.
yeah. And you mentioned the piece there of being a key to being a good founder is being sort of charismatic or having your own style. And I think a big part of that is sort of like the community around you and the connections and your friends. And we talked about this for Pi, for your job, for investing, but you also have a pretty big presence on like X, for example. And just wanted to ask you, what does that community aspect mean to you? And like, why is it important, especially for someone that's in the entrepreneurship world?
Yeah, I think X you can see as like sort of a big room that people just shout what they think their stream of consciousness into. And then it's sort of like the algorithm sort of pushes like thoughts that is in your niche or you would resonate with towards you for better or for worse. And I think it's very easy to find, people who are interested in the same like niche technical subjects as you are, people who kind of share like your worldview. So I've definitely met up with people from X. And yeah, it's been great. I'm friends with them now. And, I think once you build up a presence on Twitter, it becomes like a great tool to learn what other researchers and really smart people, domain experts are thinking, but also you have like a direct opportunity to interface with them in the comments and the DMs. They're usually very responsive. Like there isn't like if you think, there's definitely less spam, I think, on X DMs than like LinkedIn. So they
Oh,
are more responsive if you put like, thoughtful messages. And yeah, it's sort of like you can just find any job and post any opportunity and have people come work for you. So it's a great tool for that as well.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a lot about different parts of your life so far, but sort of grounding ourselves to where we are now. Could you tell us about what Base 10 is? And we mentioned a little bit, but the work you do and sort of, yeah, like, do you like your work? How's it going? Things like that.
Yeah, it's great. So Base 10 is a AI inference company. So what we do is we deploy and scale open source or custom models in production. So there's three independent sort of product lines in our platform. So one is model APIs. So think of the latest models like GLM5, Kimi K2.5, Mini Max M2.5, really performant endpoints that is basically the equivalent for these models that act similarly as Anthropic and OpenAI's endpoints, but are way faster and way cheaper. And then the other product is sort of dedicated deployment. And what that is when you are an AI native company like Cursor or Notion or Clay, you really want to isolate your workload and have all your customers run on like your VPC and sort of not share the traffic with anyone else for performance reasons and for reliability reasons. So we help people like the three companies I mentioned do exactly that. And then the last component is training, which is, we have this theory of there's sort of the world started as a monolith of models where people only used one model like GPT, ChatGPT, or Claude. And it's moving towards a direction where we want smaller models like a Quen 3.5 that is fine-tuned for a specific narrow domain for specific tasks in your workflow. And in that world, it's these models that are small can offer better latencies, better costs, and even sometimes like outperform Opus because
Wow.
you've fine-tuned it on specific data related to your customers in production. So I strongly believe in this theory as well. And I think, you should, as like the end customer, always retain control of where your data is going. And that's not, something that's always possible when you go to Anthropic or OpenAI endpoint. So I think that's like the vision that Base 10 is ultimately building towards. And then in my role specifically, I lead essentially a lot of our open source strategy. Given that we run open source models, we're deeply integrated into the open source ecosystem and the application level. So I do all the engineering of that, and we then think of really great marketing opportunities or growth strategies to grow together with folks on the application level and, bring more customers and
Yeah.
users to the both of us and in a really like collaborative way. So that's been really fun as well. And I've been also involved more recently on some projects on like benchmarking LLM performance and also post trading. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all of that is sounds like interesting work, but I love the part about benchmarking. 'Cause does it feel sort of academic? That's sort of how I imagine it.
Yeah, yeah. I think post training and benchmarking is both more academic compared to all the engineering tasks. It's a lot of like, running a bunch of experiments and collecting data and making graphs. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I guess this is a heavy question, but do you like your work? Are you having fun?
Yeah, I think in my experience, like I've worked at a couple of other startups in the past. And I've never seen a company grow so fast in terms of like users and revenue in my life. And the point that we are at today, I think I expected us to take, 3 years to get to. And I've only been here for like around 10 months. So I think sort of in the age of AI, all these like cool companies are, growing super, super fast, which is really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah. Alex, we're coming to the end, but these last few questions are about sort of your future. You just mentioned you love working, but do you see a world where because you're so involved in this entrepreneurship world, do you see a world where you make your own startup?
Yeah, I think I just really enjoy working on like hard problems with smart and kind people. And I think, I can see a future where I do that with co-founders. But right now, I really like the trajectory
Yeah,
we're on at Base 10. And there's still very good ownership to like the work I do. Yeah. And I think I'm trying to be more involved in investing as well. So I'm starting to do like angel investing and on the
nice.
side and support founders that way as well. Yeah. More to
It's
come on
amazing.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's a great time to get into that too. Yeah. And the last question, sort of outlook from your insights. So we mentioned a little bit about how work of a engineer has changed, the work of coding has changed. But what do you think sort of the day-to-day workflow and the life of a software engineer will be like in 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, I think the role of a software engineer will be choosing the right problems to solve because so everyone will shift more towards like a product manager where you're more of a generalist role, which is great for like liberal arts people. But yeah, I think it's very much now about finding the right problems to solve than solving the problems themselves because the part about execution, solving the problems themselves, a lot of it has been abstracted away with the AI tools. Um, I think as they get better and better, you just have to, keep experimenting, keep trying. I think now there's a huge conversation around like, choosing the right harness or the right configurations around your model. So how do you um, think about the failure cases around the model, whether it's a hallucination or whatever else, and how do you, as a human, catch those and make sure that doesn't happen again, and bake it into your engineering loop? I think that will differentiate a lot of people as well. I think software engineering is definitely not going away, but you can definitely see it becoming more of like a bimodal distribution where the middle is being squeezed. I actually wrote an essay on this on my website, so I can link it for you after. But the thesis is essentially like, there's never been a better time to learn how to code, but there's never been a worse time at the same time. And what I mean by that is if you are really great at using AI tools and catching all their failure cases of these models and then establishing like a great engineering lifecycle that way, you will do very well as like a 10x, even a 100x engineer with, your 10 Claude sub agents and then your tests sub agents that test all the code generation agents. So that's on one end, you are like more empowered than ever. On the other hand, if you don't try these tools, you're still, writing code by hand, or you're not thinking creatively and really pushing the frontier of what's possible, I think, you will become unemployed, unfortunately, in 3 years, which is not a good spot to be in. But I think there is enough like say this word, economically valuable tasks, and there's always like more work to be done. So even if like the low hanging fruits are solved by AI, there's always more problems. Like humans are great problem generators. People always complain about things, right? So there's always more problems in the world to solve. And now you have this great hammer and this great tool that you could use very easily with a high level of abstraction. So I think, yeah, that is kind of a long rant, but I think as a software engineer, you should think more like a product manager and find the right problems to solve and make sure those problems are worth solving for. Um, and yeah, and keep experimenting.
I feel like that's terrific advice. So definitely broaden the horizon a little bit, see what the problems are and learn how to identify which ones are worth exploring, but still retain that technical experience and the knowledge to fine tune the AI that's going to help you with making that solution to the problem. And you're right. Maybe it's good for us liberal arts students.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Because then it's sort of like, Naval said the most popular like coding language is like English or something, like I'm paraphrasing. But yeah, it's like I think how your critical thinking skills are, how clearly you communicate will translate directly to how good of an output you can get from LLMs and how good you can orchestrate these tools. So, English majors should
Yeah.
feel really good about themselves going forward if they're trying to get into this.
Alex, thank you so much for your time. This was an absolute pleasure, and I feel like we learned a ton.
Thanks
Awesome.
for having me on.
Of course.